Welcome, everybody. We are thrilled to have with us in the Tennessean studio today Adam Perry Lang, who is truly I think, one of the experts on cooking with live fire. And that's not just barbecuing as we think about it, but grilling and really utilizing hot coals to coax the best flavor out of the meat, out of the vegetables, the fish, whatever you're working with. He's here because he's joined forces with George Dickel, and the two of them are on a 9-city tour. Well, not Adam and George,
Yeah, right.
but with the George Dickel folks. And they're here in Nashville to do some dinners, and he's here with us today to give us some tips that you can take home and use for grilling. So welcome to Nashville.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the kind words.
Hey, no, we're glad you're here. So
Thank you.
one of the questions I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you do as well, what are the sort of undervalued, underutilized cuts of, let's just talk about beef and pork today,
Okay.
that you think they're just great. The flavor is great. They work well in live fire situations that you think, wow, this is, these are the cuts of meat that you really get a bang for your buck that may often get overlooked in the supermarket shelf.
I love that you didn't say cheap, because that's one of my pet peeves. I'd rather say inexpensive or undervalued, as you say it, because you can really find some incredible cuts that are underutilized. For example, one of my favorite is really going into the shoulder. Now, typically with pork, everybody's just obsessed with the roast, or to do like a roast shoulder or barbecue shoulder. But one of the greatest things is literally creating pork steaks from the shoulder, taking bone in and taking cuts, and you have a whole like intertwining of different muscles. And people say, oh, well, some of it's gonna be tougher, or some of it's gonna be. I think that's kind of the enjoyment of it too, is because it kind of, if you just have the same texture consistently, or you're not looking for that perfect piece within it, I find food quite boring. And when we're talking about pork shoulder, I also will talk about beef, the chuck roll, which you don't have the blade in, but at the same time, you can cut massive cuts of steak and cook on that. And I use this technique, which is called direct indirect, which if you can smell my jacket right now.
I wish you could smell him right now.
Morning.
Also, he's got holes in his shirt from where the sparks pop.
Yeah.
This is.
But it's that the same flavor that impregnates my shirt. What I call them flavor bombs. So as the drippings of these larger cuts start hitting the coals, it instantly. That's why we like charcoal in general and wood, because it has such a fast recovery time as opposed to something else, which is gas or whatever it is, or let's say metal deflector or whatever. It hits, and if it's not hot enough, it's not gonna create that, which then goes right back on the meat, which creates that real authentic flavor.
What do you do about flare-ups, though? Is there enough distance that's less of an issue? Or?
Well, it's a great question. I think flare-ups are part of the game. And sometimes flare-ups are quite good. When you're having flare-ups, it means you're generating more heat energy, and sometimes you need that. Okay. You don't necessarily, I don't mind cooking in the fire, which is sometimes can be to your advantage. But in general, over a longer-term cook, you want those flames, just if they're going to flare up, just to go below the grill grate, if anything. You don't want it to really go past. When you're going with a larger cut, all bets are off when you're going with a thinner cut. You want like a pretty aggressive. The grill rods, they're important too, because they're going to retain that heat. They're going to have a quicker recovery. That's why I do tend to like cast iron in general. It's easy to get.
This is great advice.
Yeah.
And my advice is, if you're putting a lamb leg on, don't go off and take a shower and put it on a hot fire.
Oh my God. Nothing like lamb fat.
Because it was a black brick.
Yeah,
and
is that what happened?
Oh, I wept.
Yeah.
I openly wept.
Well, it's interesting, because one of the few animal fats, which I found that I don't have scientific evidence to back it up, I've only had disasters too, is that lamb fat is just wicked flammable.
Yeah.
It can really, you really have to watch it.
Someone needs to do a study on that.
Yes.
I think that'd be great. Well, that's tremendous advice, and I like this idea of the direct indirect.
Yeah.
That people don't. We're so used to just grilling over the coals at a pretty close proximity, but But a lot of grills aren't built for that.
Well,
You know,
I
they're
have
not-
a
they're not-
solution to it.
yeah.
I mean, in my last book, Charred and Scruffed, I basically take 3 bricks, 3 stacks of 3 bricks, and you just get another, let's say if you're using a Weber kettle, for example, you'd have them and you just get another shelf and you place it on top. So now you have the extension.
Okay.
Okay. And then I always create like a little safety zone. I'll build it up halfway, and there's still a lot of radiant heat coming up.
Sure.
But I don't want to, if things get a little bit too hairy, I want to move it to some place. Or better yet, if you don't have room to create a safety zone because your grill surface is smaller, I simply take a cast iron griddle pan and put it there so I can still get the heat penetration, but I get it out of harm's way with the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Great tip. One of the other things, talking about charcoal, charcoal itself is an art, getting it ready for your fire. You like to create your charcoal in a separate unit and then deliver that. Are there flavor reasons for that? Are you burning off things that you don't want in with the meat? Why do you do that?
There's a couple of reasons, and some of the reason has nothing to do with taste. I'm a process guy. I like to really, you can choose where you jump on that train.
Right.
Okay, you can sit there and we can cook a meal, and all you have to do is press a button. Do I get satisfaction out of that? Absolutely not. There is something intensely gratifying for me to sit there, source out my wood, make sure it has the correct moisture content.
Right.
Okay, beautiful split. That's where the excitement starts for me. And then I source my wood. Then I'm going to burn my wood. And depending on the weather conditions and how things are, it's going to take a certain period of time. Not only me, but I can translate that passion in every step of the way to people that work with me or someone who's interested. If we ever cook together,
Sure.
you'd be pulled into this process, and it's really exciting.
It's the ritual, it's the fellowship.
It's completely
the whole,
ritual.
yeah.
And there's something which a mentor of mine described to me as the prism effect. So I could serve you a pasta dish that you had on the hills of Italy with your love of your life, and it's going to have a different flavor because you're in this moment.
Right.
And I think that traveling for great barbecue, taking the process and cooking it over a long period of time, it creates a certain anticipation factor that is undervalued in taste and eating in general.
I agree.
That's the first reason.
Yeah.
And the other reason is I think that you have control. Woods do have different flavors, and I think that it's not always super reliable to actually get a certain source type of wood.
Right.
And a lot of times, although I do make charcoal, not everything is burnt off. There is some residual flavor that the purity would be somewhat different if you did get a bag of, let's say, royal oak.
Sure.
So that's super clean. So there is this, I want to burn off a lot of the creosote and sooty, nasty stuff, but at the same time, it does retain a certain value.
Sure.
Okay. So that's another reason.
Wood of choice? I guess it depends on what you're doing and what the application is, but is there
I'll tell you
wood
what
you
my
prefer?
favorite. I'll tell you
Yes.
what my favorites are. If I was to pick one wood and one wood only, a lot of people will say oak. I really am very partial to pecan. I love pecan wood, but I have been lately working with because now I'm in California. Funny about barbecue, which we have to realize. People get very exotic with these woods,
Right.
but let's cut it out for just one moment. Cooking with the wood is as local as your choice for what you're going to get at the farmer's market.
Sure.
So, if hickory is just not available in California, to ship it in is intensely impractical. So for me, red oak is it's not post oak as
Right.
good as Texas perhaps, but it's a damn good alternative, and
Sure.
I like to cook on it. Or we have great fruitwood trees in California, which is where I've been cooking lately. So, but if I was to have anything that I want, I like post oak for beef in general. I like post oak and taper it off with pecan, and then eventually go into it because it's a bit strong. And I don't really want smoke on my meat. Okay, so I burn at a hotter temperature. Like when you put the logs in and my offset, because I have 2 different types of
Right.
cookers I use. It ignites almost immediately because there's good smoke and there's bad smoke. I'm looking for blue smoke. Blue smoke over the course of time of cooking something, 10, 12, 14 hours, even that long. You don't want to hit it hard and fast with tons of creosote. It's mouth numbing. It's horrible. What you want to do is just you cook off enough of those impurities which kind of just evaporate through the steam, and go over the meat, and you'll just see like a wisp of smoke. That's the smoke. And when I'm training my staff and people that are cooking with me, I can see just the way, if they're putting in a log and I don't have this a coal bed built up enough and it starts to smolder, I go crazy.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because it really can ruin it, and it just creates a whole different experience.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put that fresh log on the fire, and
Yeah.
that first smoke can really
Yeah.
destroy the flavor.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming to visit us. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me. Anytime.
And,
we should cook together.
yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. And let's have some whiskey while we do it.
I would love it.
All right.
I would love it.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.